Hello and welcome to our today's Coffee and Consulting. The topic from today's event is beach, work, travel, all you need to know about workation. I hope you had a nice morning already and started the week well. My name is Friederike Ruch and I will be heading the Coffee and Consulting event today. We are all at the moment already thinking about our next vacation after the pandemic and everything. And some of us may want to stay a bit longer than just for 2-3 weeks for holiday and see whether there is any kind of combination possible. So therefore, we thought that might be a good topic for today to discuss and see what kind of issues or aspects there are to take care of. Before we start, on the right-hand side, you will find the slides from today's presentation. In case you do want to download it, please do so. They are ready for you while the Coffee and Consulting event is going. The other thing is also on the right-hand side, you find a box where you can write down any kind of questions you may have to that topic, and we will answer them straight after the short presentation from our side, which will be for about 15 up to 20 minutes. And then whoever had then any kind of questions, I'm happy to answer them. If you don't find the time to write the questions down, don't worry, you can still send us an email and then we will get back to you. So then let's start with today's topic. We have found an overview about a survey Club Med has done, and there are lots of others as well you can find in the internet. We just picked one out which gives us an overview about the top 15 countries for digital nomads. Now, this is not only for people who just want to maybe stay a little longer in the place they want to have vacation now, but it's also for all these remote working models you may find, not just that they will be already, or that companies will already doing that and having implemented it, but people really want to work from abroad, and from a technical point of view, there is no problem at all with that. And therefore, I assume you as well are have to find a solution whether you want to allow that in future, or what kind of remote working or workation do you want to allow. And that short overview now should give you maybe a bit of a guidance in that regard, so that you can find an answer and then determine what will be your remote working solution. What can you offer your employees with the combination or combining work and vacation, or combining work and living or residing for a certain period in another country. In that survey, they've asked about lots of different things, and one is cost of living, safety is quite important, nature, wellness spots, and so on. So depending on what kind of questions you will ask, or what kind of things you look at or factors you look at, you may find different answers. But what we've seen is that these more Asian or more outside of Europe cities and countries are really fancy, or each of the employees are fancying to go somewhere really long or quite for a bit abroad, so to really have a good experience. Now, it would be nice to just say, yes, sure, all you whoever wants to go abroad and work from abroad can do that. There's no problem at all. Unfortunately, there are a couple of legal aspects to look at in that regard. And we will look at that with one sample in mind, which is Peter Miller. He is a British national. He is already for 10 years in Switzerland. He works for a Swiss company, is marketing manager, is married, and has 2 kids. And he is now asking that he would like to go to Dubai. He only has 2 more weeks of holiday left, so he can only use that. But his family would like to stay there for 8 weeks. So he's asking now whether he cannot join the family, take 2 weeks holiday, and then basically work the other 6 more weeks from out of Dubai. From his job and from the line manager, who he asked first, he said, no problem, you can do that if you just make sure that everything has been dealt with and done, and I don't need to overtake work from your end, then no problem at all, you can work from Dubai. What we experienced is with lots of our clients that line management or the business manager is very quick in saying, no problem at all, you can work from abroad. But then when it's actually been forwarded to the HR or to the employment law team, then they come back and say, okay, good, nice that you, line manager, allows that, but there are a couple of other things to look at. And here are the 4 main points to look at, which is immigration, labor law, social security, and income tax. And we will look at that now in the next few minutes. From an immigration point of view, you may have seen that lots of countries have now started to issue or to offer the digital nomad visas, which would be exactly for something like this, exactly the perfect option. Digital nomad visas is usually issued for people who are employed in a different country or in another country and just working in the one country in question. The general rule still applies that performing work in whatever kind of country always requires a work permit. And also working remotely is performing work. And therefore, and that will be also lead us through now all these different questions, that if somebody is working, then there needs to be certain matters taken care of. And one is that the place of employment is the one which is the most important. In regard to immigration, it's also the factors of nationality, duration, and then we have to just look at each country, what kind of regulations there are. Now, Mr. Miller, our guy, would like to go to Dubai for those 8 weeks, but only work 6 weeks. So for the 2 weeks he is going on holiday, we don't need anything. We just need for the 6 additional weeks he wants to work in Dubai, there we need the work permit for. And if we look at the list of countries there, Dubai is one of it. So there are certain conditions now we would have to look at for digital nomad visas, whether Peter Miller will fulfill them. For Dubai, we've just done that for another case. It is, you just need some salary outside from Switzerland being paid, outside of Dubai being paid to the employee. He needs to provide the usual documentation, and then there is no problem in getting the visa done. And it is quite quickly being issued. He also can take with him his family, so there is no problem at all for all of them staying there for 6 weeks. They can even, from an immigration point of view, staying there longer. So The first check we've done now is in regard to immigration, and immigration is no problem at all. He can stay in Dubai and work from there. And we just have to get the digital nomad visa in Dubai for him. The next check we need to do is in regard to Social Security. Now, that means that if he works in Dubai, if we keep that sample, then is he subject to Social Security in Dubai because he is performing work in Dubai, or can he remain in the Swiss system, or is there no insurance coverage at all? Now, to look at that, we need to see that Switzerland has, with lots of countries, treaties concluded. On the left-hand side, you will find the EU member states and the Agreement of Free Movement, as well as the EFTA Treaty. And on the right-hand side, you find the list where we have a bilateral agreement. Now, if you look at the countries there, you won't find Dubai. So there's no treaty between those two countries. Now, he's working there for 6 weeks, so it's a bit longer, which asked just for 1-2 days. So we definitely have to do something and see that he is covered in the right way in Dubai. And there, the Swiss system has a possibility that if someone has already worked and paid contribution to the Swiss Social Security system, he can be enrolled or continue to pay Swiss Social Security while working abroad in a non-treaty country and being covered for the whole period. Now, the individual just have to fulfill that condition of 5 years. Looking back at what we heard in the beginning about his case, he is already in Switzerland for 10 years and is working already for 10 years at the Swiss company Trinks AG. Therefore, no problem at all. He's fulfilling the 5 years, the condition to continue to pay Swiss Social Security contribution, so no problem at all. Even there is no treaty, he can pay Swiss contribution, he can remain in the Swiss system, so no difference. The only thing what we also have to do is we have to check now in Dubai whether there is anything he will need to pay at their end, because there is no treaty, and therefore if he's performing work on the territory of Dubai, we need to look at that those provisions as well. In Dubai, there's only the need for having a local health insurance. So basically, what we need to take care is we need to get him signing the agreement that he continues to pay Swiss Social Security while he's abroad. We need to see that he gets an additional international health insurance while working in Dubai. Plus, there will be then in Dubai the health insurance he has to pay there on top of it. Now, that is not much which needs to be done. However, what you need to see or make a decision of is as well, even the working in Dubai is driven by the employee. You need to make a decision whether you do want to take care of the cost and bear them, or you say no, because it's driven by the employee has to bear it. Income tax, which is the next one on our list, which we need to check. Now, Dubai is definitely a simple country or a simple sample. There is no income tax in Dubai, therefore we don't need to look at how high the income taxation is and whether there is any tax equalization policy we need to implement in the end. So the first thing we need to do is we need to check whether there is a double tax treaty in place between Switzerland as well as the country the employee wants to go to. Now, there is a double tax treaty with Dubai, but only for certain aspects. What will happen in his case, because there is no taxation in Dubai, he will, or Peter will, have to pay Swiss income tax on the employment income while he is working for those 6 weeks in Dubai. So he cannot benefit from the lower tax rate. In other countries, you may end up with that the employee might be subject then to the income tax in the country he is working. And then, as well as what we just talked about, the social security part, you will have to just make a decision whether you do want to pay the additional taxes based on the employee working abroad, or you say, okay, it is actually really, it's driven by the employee, and therefore the employee has to take care of everything. We have copied here the card, or better to say the map, and there you can see with which countries we do have a double tax treaty in place. The map is updated, or the last update was in May 2020. It's from KPMG, and you find there the link where you can go on yourself and have a look at each countries. We thought that might be just very useful to have the map, and you just can click on it and to see whether there's a treaty in place. So we've now looked at the social security, better to say, we started with immigration, social security, and income tax. Income tax, we don't need to do anything, so we go further one step and check in regard to the labor law. If somebody is working in a different country than the original country, then definitely what we have to look at is whether only the mandatory provisions have to be considered, or the full labor law from the other country has to be applied. Now, usually what happens is if somebody is working just for 6 weeks or for a very, very short time in a different country, then definitely we will have to look at the mandatory provisions from the labor law from the country the person is performing the work, and then seeing that those mandatory provisions will be considered while the employee is working there. Usually that the full labor law from the other country is applicable and is kind of overriding the law, the labor law, and the articles and provisions from the original country. That usually only happens if someone is really for a longer period working in the other country. Now with here, Peter Miller only working for 6 weeks, so the only thing we need to check is really the mandatory provisions. And usually that is regarding the salary level, work hours, vacation entitlements, holidays, bank holidays, things like that. And that you have to check then whether the provisions or whether the rights and everything the employee is already provided with from in his employment contract is meeting the conditions and the provisions from the country that he is working in, or whether there needs to be now an add-on to it. If we have checked that and we come to the conclusion we only need to take care of the mandatory provisions, we still will have to think about whether we do want to do an addendum to the employment contract, basically saying that for those 6 weeks, or that he is only allowed to work for 6 weeks from Dubai, that his place of work is a different one as given in or originally indicated in the employment contract, and then listing down what are the matters taken care in Social Security, looking at the income tax side, as well as then checking in regard to labor law whether there is anything we need to look at. And with that, the employee has the kind of safety and security that everything is in line, as well as from your side, from the employer side, you have put down everything, and therefore everything can go smoothly, and Peter Miller can then really go for those 8 weeks to Dubai without any problems. From a payroll side, in that case now, there's no change of payroll, so the payroll can be kept in Switzerland. Everything can remain as it was before he is going to Dubai, and therefore there is no change at all required. Processes and administration. Definitely what you need to do is, in regard for those questions or requests, you will have to go through those legal aspects and really clarify each one for each case separately, because that is really something which you should keep in mind in this area. Each situation case is different. Even if you think, okay, it's the same destination they go to, they are both maybe, or both cases you have in front of you are coming from the same country. In the end, maybe the nationality is different, or the period is different, or the position is different, and therefore there might be a different solution to it. Because one topic which we have not looked at up to now is, from the tax point of view, the permanent establishment risk. Now, looking at 6 weeks and looking at Dubai, there is no risk of permanent establishment for just 6 weeks. But there's also a discussion going on there to find a regulation, or to see whether there will be kind of a regulation for those cases as well. And the review and the analysis really do that very carefully, and then puts down all the necessary actions so that there's nothing gonna miss, and you will have the employee being compliant as well as the employer, and everything is safe and sound. In regard to saying, or in regard to seeing how much work does that mean, and whether cost and benefit, whether that is kind of balancing or not, I think we can't kind of get away from that discussion and from the wishes from employees that they do want to work or try to work also from abroad. So my suggestion or recommendation is that as a company, you just try to find a solution for your company. And even if you decide for the moment, no, that is for us too much administration, too much need of clarification. We don't have the people or the capacity to do that, and also we don't want to spend the money in it. That is absolutely fine, but keep in mind that you may have to review the situation in about 6 months or a year to see whether maybe then there might be a different solution which should be concluded. This is my overview about the different aspects. So if you look at Peter Miller, I mean, for him, we can easily, if we are the employer, we can easily offer him to go for those 6 weeks or work for those 6 weeks in Dubai. The only thing which we have to basically do is really write an addendum to the employment contract, get the digital nomad visa in Dubai for him, see that he can that he is covered in the Swiss Social Security system, meaning we will provide him with the form for the continuation of Swiss Social Security, get it signed, and income tax, we don't have to do anything, and everything else. And then discuss about the health insurance with him and make a decision whether we pay for it, for the international health insurance as well as for the one from Dubai, or we say Peter Miller has to do that. And that's all we need to do. So it's quite easy. And if we see then maybe the cost for it, we can determine and say, okay, because he is in a certain position, maybe also as a kind of benefit, he can do that. And I would say we do have, when we say yes to that, we definitely will have a happy employee. So I'm now looking forward to all your questions about that topic, and I've seen that we already received a couple. So let's see. The first question is for Social Security. Does the employer need to pay local Social Security contributions when there is no treaty, for example, in Dubai? If yes, that means they have to pay both in Switzerland and Dubai. What happens if they do not? Yes, that is correct. The employer will have to pay the Social Security contributions also in the country the employee is working from, if there is no treaty in place. Now with Dubai, we have a good solution because there is no Social Security as such for foreigners. It's only that health insurance which you need to pay in Dubai, but that is also something where in some cases the employee are paying in regard to the digital nomad visas, and therefore you would have the option to actually say, okay, the employee is paying it, or you will actually pay for it and get a reimbursement from or deducted from his next payslip. But in countries where we don't have a treaty and there is Social Security in place, and there is the likelihood that the employee will be then enrolled in that system, you will end up with paying double contributions. Because what you also need to keep in mind is, depending on the length somebody is going abroad, it might not make sense to actually get him taken out from the Swiss system and only paying the contributions from the country he is working from. Because usually if you look at the systems in other countries, then the comparison is really that the Swiss system is so good that there's always a loss in coverage, in benefits, and therefore it's not really the advice or a recommendation we would give you that you should take someone out of the Swiss system and just pay the contributions in the country abroad. But from a legal point of view, yes, there's the possibility. The next question is about the taxation. What about corporate tax, especially with regard to double taxation in terms of creating a permanent establishment? That seems to be a way bigger risk for the employer than the income tax risk for the employee. That is absolutely true, that the permanent establishment risk is also something you always have to look at in those cases. Now, what you also have to see is that in the double tax treaties, as well as in the national law, there is always indicated what will trigger a permanent establishment and what not. And looking at the positions in a company, not all the positions will actually kind of qualify for a permanent establishment, because a permanent establishment usually requires an individual who has really the power or the competence of the employer to conclude any kind of contracts, making any kind of decisions for the company. So that is not, I mean, if I, for example, I'm just a marketing manager, I don't have a corporate title, I'm just marketing manager, and I do have still one superior above me, and he is the chief marketing officer. I report to him, then most likely I will not create in whatever other country a permanent establishment, because my part or the work I'm doing will be just looked at some auxiliary work, so not really making any decisions for the company. So you always have to check in that regard. The other thing is that you also have to look in regard to permanent establishment, for how long is someone working in another country. And if we look at this workation, then usually we are looking at periods for something like 4 weeks to 8 weeks. And that you will trigger already for that short period that risk might be not really the case. However, the other thing is also that you need to look at whether not only that employee is now going abroad in the specific country, or there might be others there in a similar situation, and that might already then change the conclusion. But it's something definitely you have to look at when you look at those situations. The next question is Switzerland also thinking about a digital nomad visa? The answer to that is at the moment not. I'm not quite sure whether they will at some point. However, what I know is that they are currently discussing and seeing whether they find kind of new regulations or provisions which helps us as well as all employers and employees in Switzerland for those teleworking, to see also for the future, because it will not just end with the pandemic has ended. It will continue the question or the wish to work from anywhere else, and to find then a kind of solution or a kind of way and process to go about that would be very helpful. And therefore the Social Security Authority or the BSV is currently looking at that. Next question is, for labor laws, does the employee follow local labor laws, e.g. bank holidays, and then does not have to work on those these days, even though in Switzerland it's a normal work day? Absolutely true. So in case he is going to Dubai over the 1st of August, 1st of August is a bank holiday here in Switzerland. However, if the 1st of August in Dubai is not a bank holiday, then he definitely can work. In case now the 5th of August, for example, would be a bank holiday in Dubai, then that is the day where he's not allowed to work. So while someone is working abroad, always the bank holidays from the country the person is performing the work from has to be considered. Any ways an employer can intervene into this or ask the employee to still work based on Swiss standards? Unfortunately, that is not possible, because it would be also then not being compliant in the country the person is working from. So as these will be only a couple of days, and I think it's not necessary that you get into a conflict about it. Next question. Overall, would you consider workation as a form of posting and get an A1 form or COC? This would also imply to get a local work registration, e.g. posted worker, correct? Yes, both is correct. At the moment, if we go, or if the workation is in one of the treaty countries, then definitely we will view it as a kind of posting from someone going abroad, and then request the A1 or the COC, like we did in that case, and say we request the continuation of Swiss social security coverage. In regard to immigration, it's absolutely true if someone is working in the other country, and if there's the possibility to use the Posted Worker Act, then definitely do that. So that is the possibility to have the individual legally working in the country. In case they do have a digital nomad visa form for those people, then I suggest you rather use this, or in the end, see whether one of it at least will work. Sending someone or having someone working from abroad and then not having a work permit in place, I would never recommend you that, because you also have to keep in mind that the checks in the other countries will increase and are increasing as much as they increase in Switzerland. And I think there was 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago even an article in the newspaper about it, that employers complained about that there are too many checks in companies here in Switzerland to see whether the necessary work permit is in place. And the same applies to the countries abroad, and therefore try to get the work permit for the individual, as well as see that the rest of the clarification you have done, and the employee will only go and work from abroad if everything is in line. And we have received one more question. In what ways could a permanent establishment or a non-registration be discovered? How are checks increasing, and in which countries, and on what basis? There are lots of different bases and things why that can come up. Either somebody is just seeing it and is informing the police of it, or the police is already seeing that themselves and is checking then on it, or there is sometimes an accident, or someone is becoming sick and has to go to the doctor, and then everything gets started. At least if we are now talking in regard to those workations things. Otherwise, the neighbors are one key factor which usually helps the authorities or the police to actually start it. Or the other thing is somebody is going to another country, and then when they enter the country, they already answer, yes, we will come here for holidays, and I will be working as well. Or a child is just responding and saying, my father is then working here. So there are lots of different aspects. There's not just one which can trigger it. And sometimes it is not really the straight process why or how the authority is getting the information. It's sometimes really kind of funny. And I just know from Austria and Germany, they are above all looking in regard to the cross-border workers, and they're checking on the permanent establishment risk much more than they've done before, because at some point the transitionary agreement is then expiring, and afterwards, when the old rules are established again, then both or then any country has then also more power to actually go about it. If you have any other question to that topic, then you can, as said, drop us an email and we definitely will get back to you, or just call us and we can discuss it. We have also the option, if you have seen that on our website, you can arrange for a 15-minute call without any cost, and therefore that might be helpful to maybe discuss and get it clarified. There's one more question. Let me quickly see. Do you know already about specific cases where companies had to pay fines or run into legal problems due to workation that wasn't done legally sound? If yes, can you share some insights? In our company, most people say the risk of discovery is so low, we can go with a policy like don't ask, don't tell. What do you think about this? I don't have already some specific cases where I can share and where I can see that fines had to be paid. What I can just tell you, never go with that policy, because the risk is too high, as well as I think we cannot really use that approach, because in the end, we want, as a company, we do want to be as compliant as possible. You always will find solutions you're in where you can't be compliant because of whatever kind of reasons. But if you know that somebody is going abroad and it's now with this workation thing, then don't do it. I can't recommend it. We can definitely, if you do want to discuss it, the offer about the 15 minutes call on our website, or just give me a call otherwise, and we can discuss about it, but don't do it. I never can recommend you that. Even the risk seems low. For me, it's the same thing, or I like to compare with speeding on the motorway or speeding with a car. It's usually speeding on the motorway. There's also the risk quite low that the police will actually catch you or see you. However, it still can happen, and then you pay for the fine. And then the consequences out of it are just much more than you actually would like to have. So in the last 2 minutes, I just would like to quickly tell you what you can find as well from us. In September, we do have a half-day seminar about business travelers, which is also held in English. And then our next webinar is about tax compliance and tax optimization in August. And these are the next events from our side, as well as then in August, we will have our next coffee and consulting. I hope you enjoyed today and you have found or received the answers to your questions which you've asked us. And if there is anything else we can help you, then just ask us and get back to us. We are happy to support you. And wish you a great week. And in case we don't see or speak in summer, have a great summer. Thank you.